right, we'll call to order the special board meeting of USD 464 for Wednesday, November 18th, 2020. Before we approve the agenda, my initial comment would be, I think the main point of the meeting tonight is somewhat informational from the building principals and Mr. Feldkamp. I mean, they have the authority to act on our plan. I mean, I think we all know that we've crossed some of the gating criteria and a variety of things. I mean, there are a couple of action items on here. I mean, the intent that I asked those be added was because we can't amend the agenda for a special meeting. So whether there's a need to take action on those items, I guess will kind of depend on the discussion. And board members ask a lot of different questions here, but I think Lauren kind of has a recommendation on how we're going to move forward in this current environment. But with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'm going to say Stephanie got the second. I don't know. I couldn't tell who else jumped in. All in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, motion carried. With that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Lauren, and kind of let you give an update on everybody and why we want to meet.
Okay, thank you. Well, we've had a lot of COVID business going on since the weekend and all the way up through 5 o'clock today, basically. And let me explain first. I had some handouts, and I didn't know if everybody had access to their email, because I sent out a very late email around 6 o'clock that has the information that was requested about the 2-week. This is this one here. I mean, it was the one where I met with with Jamie Miller with Leavenworth County Health way back in August, basically, and then with all the superintendents from Leavenworth County. And through that discussion, what we had talked about was, through Jamie's recommendation, not a mandate, but a recommendation, is that we look at data from 2 consecutive weeks. So if we were to go red Monday, that we would look at 2 weeks of information. Now, the reason is, and he kind of explains it in his top paragraph, the reason he said that was it would keep us from going red, then yellow, then back and forth. Some continuity, I guess, would be the best way to describe it. I feel like I wish I had shared that information better with you, probably at one of the board meetings. I did put it in one of my Friday updates the day after the meeting, but I'm not sure we discussed it after that, and that's on me. But anyway, this was what the administrative team has been working off of since August. And all of my building leadership knew this. It was discussed at a lot of our meetings. But anyway, I just wanted to share that with you so you knew it. It doesn't mean we have to follow it, because it was a recommendation, basically. I do know that when I met with all the Leavenworth County superintendents and Jamie Miller Monday, this was discussed again. And I would say that I would say 4 of the 5, and maybe all 5 schools in Leavenworth County were planning on following the same plan. And I talked to almost everybody this morning. And so that was where they were at. So to kind of put this all together, when we talked about the recommendation, when I was talking about starting remote on the 30th, it was 2 weeks. It would have been 2 weeks from Monday. And I know it created some conversation. I had several board members ask me for clarification, and that's really what it is. And doesn't mean that we have to follow that. It just means that was the conversation I had with Jamie Miller and other county soups. Okay. So do you have any questions about that? I don't want to confuse you, and I hope that answers maybe some of your questions, or if you have any further, I'd be glad to answer. I also put in just the approved criteria, just as a review, and this states when we would go red, and you can see it. If we would go remote, and that would include no extracurricular activities. And my principals know that. I think my coaches know that, and that's for probably some topic of discussion this evening a little bit. So we'll see how that goes. I did email you some information from Keisha that just came out this afternoon. And Cody, if you wouldn't mind stepping up here for just a second, because he's a lot more into this now. You might want to explain just what that means from Keisha with coming from the executive board and then where it's going next and what that means as far as this is almost unprecedented that Keisha is stepping in like this. So
Right, so the executive board met today. It was almost a 6-hour meeting working through this, looking at data. And right now, the executive board has voted to move this motion that I'm about to tell you about to the board of directors. And there's a special board of directors meeting now Tuesday for them to look at this and vote on it. What they're looking at doing, what the proposal would be, is to move the competition date, the first competition date for winter sports back to January 15th. So that would get moved back to January 15th. They've adjusted what competition would look like. So typically in a basketball season, you're allowed 20 competition dates. It would get cut down to 13, and that would trickle down to every activity. They would adjust practice. They would still allow practice by Keisha recommendation. They would still allow practice up to December 22nd, which is the normal start of the winter moratorium. The winter moratorium is scheduled to go to December 27th. That would get pushed back to, I believe, January 4th, either 3rd or 4th is that date, and then practices could again resume that next day. So that is kind of the quick version of what they're looking at, and again, that'll be voted on by the board of directors on Tuesday for Keisha.
and really, we don't know how that vote will go on
No,
Tuesday.
I mean, of course, we know what our situation is and where we're at here. There's, you know, the reason that has been left locally up to this point, those decisions, is because there's a lot of communities all over the map in terms of what they're dealing with the COVID, how it's impacting their athletic teams, their leagues, and so yeah, it's. I would have no idea right now where the board of directors would end up voting on this.
So is that recommendation for high school and middle school, or
High
just
high school and middle school, yes.
Because middle school's already started, right?
Correct. Middle school's already started, but this would have an impact on how, you know, of course, how they would continue with practices, competitions, when they would start back up. To be honest with you, so this just happened 2 hours ago, and so I'm a little bit more brushed up on the high school than the middle school right now in terms of the changes, but it would impact the middle school as well. It was similar changes.
But the boys start later, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've already moved our boys' season back to starting practice on January 4th, and then moved the start of the competition back a week, I believe, so it's like, I don't know, I have it, it's the 21st of January is our first game, yeah.
Yeah.
And that is, that's a blanket across the state. It's not like there's a tiered level based upon, you know, community numbers or anything.
Correct. So if the board of directors vote that through, that's, indication member school will have to follow that.
Thank you, Cody. That was brand new late this afternoon. The next thing I have to just touch base on was the recommendation that I sent out to you. When was that? Monday? Yeah, Monday afternoon. Yeah, I met or Tuesday. I met with the building lead principals, and we went through this with a lot of discussion, and like I mentioned in my email, a lot of valuable input. And this is where we are. We knew that on the 17th, we were more or less forced to go to remote at the high school based on Mr. Farrar's recommendation. He didn't have enough staff to adequately fill the classes, just to be quite honest about you. Couldn't get, there was no way we could find enough subs. And so we would have had a lot of classes uncovered, or we wouldn't have been able to have classes. It was just too high of a number. And so we went remote, not because we were in red. We went there because of the number of teachers that we didn't have
In quarantine.
that were in quarantine. So that's really where that started. And then the next step was just talking about, we knew after visiting with Jamie, I met with him at 10 o'clock on Monday morning, and he informed all the superintendents that where we were gonna be at 4:30 Monday, which was gonna be that 16.30%, which put us for the first time in the very top category that he always asks us to refer to. It's, is it the percent of positive? I think it is. It's the very top. There's 3 categories, and he always says, look at the very top one, but it's the middle column, and that's where we were looking. Most of the year it was running, as you saw, 6, 7, 8. You know, it would bounce a little bit, and then here we were at 16.30, and you know, we were in the red, and he wanted to discuss that with us. And then at that time, we also talked about how long it would take us to pivot and to go remote, and all the superintendents from each school shared their insight with that. And he also told us that the way things are trending, going into next week, he is predicting somewhere around 18%, with the following week as high as 20. That was, I mean, that's 2 weeks away, but it still is telling us where we're trending, and that follows national trends, state trends, and county trends. They all look alike if you actually look at those maps. So at that point, after sharing that information with the building lead principals, we talked about how we would go remote and what that would look like. And you can kind of read through it there. We still talked about having the ability to just practice from the 16th to the 25th, only because that would be the second week of being in red. Does that make sense? I mean,
It's the first week.
this week would be the first week, next week would be the second week. So that would give you 2 weeks, and that's debatable. I mean, honestly,
Well, if,
the principals are gonna listen to what the Board of Education has to say on this.
but my understanding was the intent of that 2 weeks was just to be a buffer if you were going to be hovering around that to prevent going back and forth.
Yeah,
So if the trend isn't showing that, then the
No.
2 weeks doesn't necessarily
and
apply.
Drew, you are correct. I mean, that was the idea originally, that if we're 16.3, the next week are we gonna be 14.9, and then go back and forth, and he just said, you don't wanna yo-yo over that line, that 15%. Which we all understood, so that's exactly to your point, but he did tell us, it's just the way things are trending. I can have, if I could have, I think this is important. Mark and Cody, or excuse me, Mark and Chuck, the August 30th is not set in stone by any stretch. So where are your buildings in at this point as far as pivoting and going remote?
You
If I-
mean November?
What's that?
November 30th. You said August.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry. So Chuck, how long would it take you to actually go remote in your building?
Well, we had that plan to initially, we said it'd take 2 days to distribute, get a plan to pick them up. If we got a call on Sunday, for example, then it'd take us 2 days to get the carts and the Chromebooks ready to go and then distribute it, and we thought we'd be ready full remote on Wednesday. We have a plan in place to get all of our Chromebooks up this Friday as a practice run. And I'm anticipating that, well, if they take them home this weekend, we go red second week, we're ready to go remote on Monday. Our classes have all been practicing. I went around to several classrooms today and asked teachers, and they're ready to go if we need to go remote. And I've asked, tomorrow I'll be asking some more questions about what your plans look like, and I sent out an email today with some expectations. But our teachers are ready to do what we need to do, and we've been working with Forrest, and we have a plan, so every student in this elementary, when they go home Friday, is gonna have a device. So,
Thank you,
that's
Chuck.
where we're at. If you have any questions,
Yes.
you have to answer.
And so, Mr. Altman, where's the middle school at this point?
Well, all of our core teachers have already been teaching a remote class. year. So those teachers are ready to go and have kind of ironed out a lot of the kinks. Teachers have been working with students all this week. Actually, I started last week just on practicing, getting into a Google meeting, going through like how to get onto your online grade textbook and different things. So I think we're really in a good place. I had a leadership team meeting this evening after school, and everybody seems pretty positive. We've been outlining expectations for teachers and for students. So I think we're ready to go as soon as we get the word that that's what we need to do.
Thank you, Mark. And then Mr. Farrar is probably ahead of us on this with a couple days under their belt.
Yeah, we completed our second day today, and it went very well. I heard from numerous teachers that actually said our attendance was better today than it was when we were in person, oddly enough. So, like Mr. Altman, our teachers.
High schoolers out of bed, that's the thing in our house.
Yeah, our teachers have been practicing since day one, and we were ready to go. So we had a good couple days. Any questions?
Thanks, Mark.
Well, I have a question for basically all of you, because one of the things that I was thinking about is like, we have this situation today that we're dealing with, that we're gonna have to make some calls on. But also as how effective was our measures within the school? Because there's two different risk groups, right? There's the community risk, right? That we're the school's kind of along the ride for. We can't control that. And that environment drives, can drive our decisions just because we're, staff getting quarantined or sick, or, students in the same way. And then there's what we can control, which has been our policies and procedures within the school, and how effective that has been with regards to holding things, controlling the situation as far as, transmission, or, identifying sick people, being able to effectively do that, send them home, get them quarantined, and, manage that within the school. So my perspective, and it's only a limited one, so I don't have near the kind of information that you all see every day.
So are you asking how we've been sending our numbers to Warren.
Yeah.
Today in the elementary was the first day in probably a week that I haven't had to poll a teacher, like a reading teacher, cover a class. Today was the first day in a week, and we've got 2 more teachers returning tomorrow.
Yeah.
But that's.
Well, no, so.
Is that part of the answer?
No, because what I was looking at is, because at some point in time, this is going to be here for a long time. At some point in time, we'll have to make a decision on coming back to school, right? And understanding how the community numbers influence that decision, as well as, is there anything when we do come back at some point, about how we are going to, if we're going to do anything different, and what we've already been doing, how effective was that with regard, because it really kind of boils down to whether or not we have solid information on contact tracing, right? So if somebody gets sick, was that contact, that exposure within the school, or was it outside of the school?
So I would like to answer this with looking at from August to now, not the last 5 days.
Yeah.
We've done very well, and I think it's not just Tonganoxie. I think most schools are doing well that are wearing masks. It's been, in fact, Monday, the county health officer said the problem doesn't lie in the schools. The schools are doing it right. And I think, if you're following the procedures that you have out there, wearing a mask, washing your hands, you're sustainable. You can keep going. But it comes to a point.
To the extent that you have a staff member going to a grocery store, getting out in the community, when the community numbers are that much higher, then there's just higher risk within the community. And I remember having the discussions here, was you can have a lot of students quarantined, you can have a lot of, you can have students get sick, but the staff is a sensitive one, because number one, they're more at risk with the, COVID anyway. And number two is, you need them to keep the school running in the first place.
Drew, I heard you say, what would we do different if we came back full we're learning all the time, but I'm with Mark. I phased, it's 3 months. We're in 3 months of in-person every day. Our teachers have not had a break, our kids haven't had a break, and the numbers are pretty dang good. I mean, Lee Summit, 2 days ago, said they're going full in person, and last night, they changed it right back. The best thing that's happened, in my opinion, is we've stayed that course. And if we switch to a different course, I'm confident that my staff will do everything they need to do in that course. And if we have to come back, we'll come back and we'll do it well, because we have a great staff, we have a great plan, and we've been following it. Our masks are on, we're trying to keep, but if you have a mask and I have a mask, we don't necessarily need that 6 foot. Our kids are washing their hands, sanitizing their hands, and within this school environment, I'm with Mr. Farrar, we're doing everything we can. But there's 16 hours of the day that we don't know what's happening.
Right.
But I feel like whatever plan we go with, our staff will do whatever we need to do.
Then I have an assumption that I'd just like to have your opinion on as well for everyone is, my assumption is that once we go full remote, that how effectively we can deliver that is potentially better than having a mix, right? Especially at the high school where you are doing, streaming, and I think we are, knew from the beginning, that's challenging for those folks that are remote. Can be done, but because I'm trying to just understand, if we go full remote, is the expectation then that the effectiveness of that may improve? Because
Are you comparing it to what we're doing now or what would happen in March?
well, it'd be both really, because
I'm
definitely
confident-
better March. March was,
I'm confident that it'll improve. Our remote teachers right now, the ones that we have at grade level, have been doing phenomenal. And they have a good plan. They've been collaborating with the rest of our teachers, and I think all of our teachers have a better understanding what they need to do remotely. I think it'll be vastly improved. Don't you agree, Mr. All?
I think it'll improve greatly because our teachers are able to focus on one audience at that point. So they've improved a lot. Mark, you have anything to add?
No, I would agree, I'm worried about second semester, we've been concerned about having to teach to both audiences, which we haven't been doing this semester. So yeah, I think having everybody remote at one time, I think is definitely gonna be a good situation. I think our teachers are ready for it, and they'll deliver good instruction.
So other than, I'm going back to the 2-week thing.
Mhm.
So other than the risk of, the ping pong back and forth, is there any reason that we would wait until the 30th, given where is there any other reason besides that we would wait until the 30th?
I would interject one thing, Justin. Talked to KSD today. We had a meeting this morning, and Dr. Randy Watson has been pushing that we all realize that having kids on site is better than remote. And that is the only reason, is that if we can go a few more days by having the elementary kids or middle school, high school kids on site, academically that's better. But after that, Justin, there's no reason why we couldn't pivot to Monday. But you would just lose a couple, 3 days, or a couple days basically, Monday and Tuesday, of on-site academic opportunities.
I guess, to me, it would be the parents that have to deal with it and have to have the kids make the arrangements and do everything. Our staff needs a break. They've been carrying a load. The kids don't seem to be, they'd learn better if they were here. I don't know, a couple days seems like it could buy a lot of time for some people to make some arrangements.
I think the parents' arrangements, especially at TES, is going to be more challenging than any of the other 2 buildings. Here it is Wednesday, but that's about it.
Well, next week is just a 3-day week, right?
2 days.
2 days, okay, and then, coming back after Thanksgiving seems to be concerning to me.
We wouldn't come back out.
Okay.
No, the recommendation I had was just Monday, Tuesday.
Okay.
But honestly, that is not set in stone. It was a recommendation, and we were kind of using that 2-week strategy And that's how that came into play.
Are we setting a date that will for sure, I mean, will you set January 4th in there, or are we just using the 2 week to
Well,
set, I mean,
Knowing, all right,
I
so.
mean, it'd be nice if the trend improved sooner, I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm that hopeful, but I don't know if we set an end date or not.
So we met this morning, and we talked about the possibility of reviewing this every 2 weeks. I think that would be a popular move. It's gonna put it back on the school district to look at our data to know if we're still in red, which, I mean, according to our county health director, there's a great probability that's gonna happen. Are the numbers going to improve by January 4th? I don't know. But, I mean, that would be one strategy, is to know that every 2 weeks we're gonna reevaluate this, and then put that information out for the staff and for parents and students that we're gonna go another 2 weeks, or we're gonna come back. But that would be, I mean, that would be a stretch, the way numbers are looking right now, through December. To me, it just looks like December, the numbers are not gonna come below red. It'd be a huge surprise if they did, across the county. So does that help a little? January 4th is a date that, I mean, that's when the teachers come back for a flex day. We were using that as a target date of probably our best shot at maybe looking at coming back on site. But there's no guarantee.
I think my preference would be, rather than communicating a date with all the unknowns around that date, I would communicate a process by which we're gonna give updates and the amount of notice that we're gonna give folks. Rather than January 4th, which, I mean, we're picking out of thin air.
Well, wouldn't we be today, though, going, it's a minimum of January the 4th? I mean, because by the time, if you go the 30th, you go 2 weeks and you evaluate the data, I mean, at some point, you're running so close to Christmas break, it just makes kind of sense to go the rest. I can see the logic to go clear through the Christmas, but I mean, I don't.
Even if you communicate the 4th, I think the most important thing you can communicate is how we're gonna give updates and how much notice people would have for when that date was decided.
Yes, that's what I was, like, we would be able to say, hey, by this date in January, or in December, we'll be able to confirm whether January 4th is real or it's gonna be pushed back.
I know, Ashley has mentioned this a couple times to me, but if we were to go on the 23rd, Ashley, how many teaching days? Was it 20 or 15? I can't.
If
Remote.
everyone went remote on the 30th, then that would be 15 school days that middle and elementary would miss.
And then if we went on the 23rd, it would just be
add 2 days.
2 days, 17,
17.
before Christmas break. That's what we're talking about.
So, I have a few things. So, first of all, so in Lawrence, so if we're worried about community numbers, in Lawrence, KU Med Center they have a process that they do predictions for hospitals. So we all know how all the hospitals are at capacity. So in Lawrence, Monday they had 33 patients of COVID, and the prediction is that by November 28th, they're gonna have 133. It's gonna quadruple by then. So if the goal is, like, so here's where my dilemma is. So the statistics are that school is the safest place for the kids. We have less than 1% positive COVID cases. It's 0.6%, and that's a stretch because that's including the 2 that are awaiting tests. So we've been in school since August, and we have 0.6% positive COVID rates. So we are not doing any of this because we have COVID, because we're transmitting COVID, right? We've proven that.
It's the county.
So it's the county. So if we're worried about the county and the community, then you need to look at those numbers, because if they're going to quadruple by November 28th, then to me it makes sense that you go remote and see if that even helps. Because if you go remote starting the 23rd and you're remote for 2 weeks, then you can look at the numbers. And if the numbers have not changed in the community, it's very easy then to assume, I would think, that us being remote does not impact the community. The only thing we're impacting is now we have kids that have proven to do worse educationally at home remote.
Good.
And the other thing is not bringing them back before Christmas I struggle with that a little bit because I do understand, like, okay, we're only gonna bring them back for 5 days, or we're gonna only bring them back for 7 days. But at the same time, we sat in the same room saying, we're gonna bring the remote kids back 1 day a month, and it's gonna make this huge impact on their social emotional, on their academics, 1 day a month. And now we're saying, oh no, it doesn't matter. If they come back 5 days, that's not a big enough deal to do that, so they need to stay home till January. So I just am confused.
Well, I'm banking my thoughts on the fact that the health director told us it just does not look like those numbers are gonna trend below into yellow in December.
Well, there's,
And really, that's it.
there's also this aspect of how you maintain the operation of the school, because if the community numbers are, going to be continue going up that much, then you would anticipate that these numbers that we have here on this sheet, which are largely driven by the community, will then also go up. And again, it's all about, do you have enough people to keep it going? And if you don't, then that's it. You can't do it. And no matter how safe it is in school and that kind of stuff, it's just that you're being taken there with the community numbers.
And I understand that. I'm just saying, I think the messaging needs to be very, very clear, because if the reason that we're going home is because we're impacting the community, I don't think that it is. We're
No.
going off community
Oh,
numbers.
we're impacting community because we're going remote. Are you talking the COVID numbers?
I don't think the school,
I think the community's impacted.
it's the other way around. Community's impacting our numbers.
That's what I think, is the community's impacting our numbers.
Right, so, okay.
My concern is that there is a possibility that the number of, well, first of all is, we know a lot of these folks are either positive or being quarantined due to the fact that they're getting
Contact tracing.
Identified as potentially being sick at the school. And even with that, there are some that are, after school or on, especially at the high school, there's going to be some percentage of them that are going to still hang out with the friends, do that kind of stuff. And now if you don't have them in school, the availability or the likelihood of those number of hours of those contacts, even if they are quarantined or sick, the risk to some of those pockets will be even that much higher. Just because they'll have more time to hang out together in an uncontrolled environment, which, here we have a pretty monitored and controlled environment. So, but I don't know how you would avoid that.
Well, I mean, it seems to me, I think what I've heard from the staff is we've had a reasonable plan that's been effective for the year. And, I mean, other than the understanding of the 2-week time period, I mean, if we just follow the plan, it's the best option that we have. Otherwise, we're all just speculating based on opinion and conjecture and what we think and what the trends are. And, I mean, to me, it seems like the 30th is reasonable just because some of those people need more time, and maybe we don't communicate out to January the 4th. I mean, it seems to me like we ought to be monitoring. I mean, the stats come out every week.
Mhm.
I mean, if people need a week or 2 weeks to pivot back to get their life in order so that they can deal with their kids. But the elementary kids, this is no impact to me. I got a high school girl that can drive herself and take care of it. But if you had to put your kid in daycare and find somebody to cover it for work, I don't know, you need as much time as possible, and then they need notice to get it to reverse course so they can get back to their life. But I mean, that's just my thoughts on it.
I can just share that I know that 4 of the county schools, besides us, are going remote on the 30th. And going back to kind of what Jim said, just the time to pivot and
Well, is there
that's about it.
any reason why, let's say, K through 5 is the most challenging for parents to accommodate, then is there any reason that you have to tie the middle school decision in with the
No.
elementary school?
No, but it does put a lot of stress on the staff.
Yeah.
I mean, our elementary staff they've been working very, very hard. And I've talked to, Chuck and his team about that, and they're maxed.
They're spread out.
They are, and I admire how hard they've worked. So I guess that's my response to why wouldn't we just keep the pre-K, like, 2 on site? And then but everybody's had that discussion, and it would be a huge challenge.
What's the difference in total staff as a percentage between elementary and high school? Because high school was forced to.
How many staff do you have, Chuck?
In the whole building?
No, certified. Or, yeah, just do the whole building, because your number is the entire.
About 110, if you count cafeteria, custodians, all classified, we have about 110.
Yeah, so the percent's quite a bit less than.
We've been scrambling in all areas. I mean, we're doing a great job, but I'll just tell you, our staff we're max stressed. But they're doing good, they're doing great, I couldn't be more proud of them, but.
Yeah, but you can only
Just
do that
takes
for
one
so
or
long.
two things, and then the next thing you know.
What about the high school? How many total staff? How's that?
They're running around 20, that number, that 13 is about 25 to 26% of their staff. I think he has around 40.
45, it's
45.
about 25% of our certified staff.
Yeah,
It's pretty high number.
yeah, it's considerably high. From my perspective, we're gonna do whatever the board decides to do. If it's the 23rd or the 30th, we're gonna do the very best we can.
So
How's
what
that
are the
go?
reasons not to do the 23rd?
What would be the main reason?
What are the reasons not to do it?
I think the biggest reason is then we're following what our plan was, which, I mean, we're using the 2-week window of, would there be a chance that we would go, the number would drop below, back into yellow? The odds are not good, but that would be one reason. The other thing is just give the parents a little more time, especially at the elementary. It has nothing to do with the high school or the middle school. It would be the elementary, a little more time to pivot and find coverage for those kids on that Monday and Tuesday. And is there anything else I'm missing on that, guys? I think that's what we've talked about. That's.
Why would we not say, like, we're gonna start with a 2-week break? Like, we're gonna do 2 weeks and then
That's
reevaluate.
not what our policy says. Our policy is when the data says it, then we move. We're not setting a date that we're gonna come back and us adjust it. The data's gonna tell us when we move. The data's telling us we're gonna go remote.
That's why, I think if our interest is following the plan, and I think that's my interest, rather than give a date, any date, I would say, how frequently are we gonna communicate with families? What's the process gonna be? How are we gonna communicate, and what process are we gonna follow? And how much alternate notice will they have to come back? Don't give a date, it doesn't matter.
So that's where that 2-week of data helps. If we pivot back,
I got that.
That's
The
where-
2-week thing coming back, 2 weeks in yellow to come back, that doesn't hurt my head at all. The 2 weeks in red before you go out, I mean, that's like saying, my smoke detectors are going off, but I'm gonna sit here for
No,
30 minutes and see
yeah,
what
we
happens.
talk- we talk
I don't
about
like,
yeah, we talked about
so
that.
that's my, the 2 weeks in yellow to come back, I have no heartache with
Yeah.
that.
We were just trying to be consistent.
I get it.
Especially the way the trends are currently.
The only other thing I would say is if we go remote, it would be my recommendation, to not have activities. I mean, that's following what that's not gonna be popular. But our gating says no extracurricular activities.
But
And
the statistics don't support that.
I know. And Kai, I
Because
agree
you
with
have 0.6% of the population that is positive, and they've been going to practices without masks. They've been playing with masks, some of
They should
them.
be going to practice with masks, because that's what the policy requires.
Well, been.
I know they probably take
Whatever
them
the
off.
policy is, they've been doing, the point is, whatever they've been doing, it works because they have 0.6%, and that's pushing it, that's high, and the thing is that I'll go back to the thing I already said, and we talked about most recently, is that, the social emotional aspect of all of this is hard on the kids, and that's a population, it's so the population of people in athletics is 8.5% of the students and staff combined population is in athletics. So those people would choose or not choose to go to practice. And if they choose, then you have that 8% of population that's healthier, mentally. And they've proven not to hurt anything.
I can fully appreciate that probably the best thing that's happened in this fall is the kids' activities. It could be practice, it could be, we're not talking soccer, football, cross country, any of the other, golf, take it. It's brought some normalcy to their lives for the social emotional piece. The only thing I look at is then we would have to change our reopening policy.
And here's another thing, when all of the sports got pushed off in March, so for example, club sports, so club volleyball. So when club volleyball was told in certain counties that they couldn't have, the county said, you can't practice. So everyone just took their teams and they made their own rec, on the side. So what you're gonna have, and I think Drew, you talked about it earlier, what you're gonna have is instead of the kids getting to go to the gym and play basketball where there are rules and regulations and they're safe, there's a coach coaching them, they're gonna go to the park, they're gonna go to wherever, somebody's, and they're gonna play basketball. That's reality.
I don't disagree.
And then the probability of them spreading COVID is a lot higher.
Well, I think even if you have practices, what you have is scenarios where after practice, after a game, you're gonna have groups to get together and do exactly what you're saying anyway. That's where a lot of the quarantining and stuff has come already. Because right now, I know that there's parties going on and kids getting together, and there's some of those kids that are part of that, which are quarantined and or even to the point of maybe even sick. So that's a pretty high risk then for the other kids who are also part of that same activity, who are isolating more and following those quarantine rules, to then go to that sports activity. And you're combining all those circles.
But we already had an example of that I go back to, the statistics do not prove that. The statistics prove that, yes, kids have been getting together without masks, and yes, because of that, there are some kids that have positive COVID cases, but statistically, we have 0.6% positive COVID cases, and that is the highest it's ever been in our district since August, 0.6%. And that all of that has been happening. Absolutely, 100%, yes.
The statistics on that we're talking about in the K community today also. Statistically, there are very few transmissions, if any, happening in high school athletics.
But,
But they've been outdoor athletics too.
Yeah, they have been outdoor.
Mostly. Volleyball's a little different, but most of them have been outdoor.
I think what we're gonna find is statistics may change once we're not being as safe in school because we're out of school. I think the transmissions are probably gonna go up, and I think we'll see that. I think that's something we should be concerned about.
But none of us have so what we're doing, we based our plan on statistics, right? So the COVID numbers have to be 16 or higher, whatever. And so, but now we're just forgetting, okay, well, you can prove that statistically it's safe to be in the gym with your coach, but we're just gonna say we're not gonna do it because why? What am I supposed to tell the kid? What are the coaches supposed to tell their teams? Like, you have been wearing your mask, you've been doing all of these things, but now you can't play because why?
Well, I think,
Why is that? Because we are pretending we know what the future's gonna be?
I don't know the answer, but I personally would rather lose a season than a life of a family member, just because the transmission occurred.
But then, if that's a choice that each family makes, then that child doesn't participate. Because everybody makes that decision, even on a year without COVID. If you choose to allow your kid to play football, there's a very high chance that it's a contact sport. I mean, that's why an ambulance sits at the field, because it's a dangerous sport, and that's your choice as a parent to allow or not allow that child to play. And it's the same thing with COVID. Like, I think that that's why it's such a hard issue for people to wrap their head around, because we all wake up every day and we're like, we all have changed our opinion about things, I would gather, since March. Like, you know, one day you wake up and you feel strong this way, and the next day you're like, oh wait, I don't know. I mean, I think I've taken my mask on and off 25,000 times because I just don't know some days how I feel. So, you know, I mean, it's all, at the end of the day, we luckily live in a country where we can all make that decision for ourselves and our families. I think, hopefully.
You know, Kyle, my goal is that if we lead by example and try to be as safe as possible, that we can salvage these seasons. And that would be my only message to the kids. And that's not a real popular message, is we want to recontinue, like Keisha said, in January and February and March, and then through the spring. I don't know if we don't get control of this, where we're headed.
So it's my understanding that if Keisha decides on Tuesday that they're not gonna start sports until January, then it would be a mute issue, because, right?
Cody, did you hear that question?
I'm sorry.
Well, it's my understanding that if Keisha decided on Tuesday that sports were gonna start in January, then this whole argument's a mute issue, because then everybody would be on the same playing field, because then if some districts in our league decide to be able to practice and some decide not to practice, then we're all at different places. But if Keisha does come out and say, yes, we're gonna start our season in January 15th, right?
Yeah.
So everyone is starting January 15th, then they make the decision for everybody and everyone's on the equal playing field.
Correct, and of course, we won't know how that's gonna go until Tuesday.
Right.
That would be part of the vote Tuesday. Now, again, I know I already spoke up once. Keisha, in their proposal, has said, you can continue practicing because all the data shows that this is not happening. And I know we're moving inside versus outside, but we've also been in school this whole time inside, and we have not seen transmissions inside in that setting. So Keisha has said, all the data says we can continue to practice and do so safely if you're using the mitigating policies that we put in place: face masks, small cohort groups, everyone having their own water bottles. So there's a lot of things in place there to do that safely, which we've been doing. And if we continue to do that, I do think we can do it safely. Going back to what if this policy doesn't get voted through, or this legislative proposal, in speaking with other league schools and county schools, I think many, while going remote, will still continue to practice and compete. Just in talking to ADs and other administrators around the league, around the county, I think that's the path that most will take, is allowing kids to continue practicing and compete.
Of the staff and students at the high school, how many of those are athletic related? How many of those staff are coaches?
Staff right now for winter sports, we have, girls basketball 2 at the high school, 1 at the elementary.
No, I'm talking about the 13 that are in quarantine right now.
Oh, how many are in quarantine right now? Well,
How many are coaches?
We have 5 from our football staff that are quarantined right now.
I thought there were around 7. Am I wrong? I thought the total was around, what?
We have 5 direct contacts on the football staff.
Yes.
And we have 3 positive cases on the regular, not coaching staff.
Okay, well.
So the thing is though, that the coaches would have to make the decision whether they were willing to take the risk to coach those teams, and
But those coaches are also teachers,
Right.
that we can't continue to operate our building.
Well, they're
That's
teaching
the remote
remote.
Conversation, not what.
Well, one of them is not a teacher, but he's a staff member. And the other one, the other one is a teacher, but he'd be teaching remote, so he can be in quarantine and teach remote.
Well, I guess I just, as much as I like to continue sports and do things, I mean, I think we approved a plan. And if we're at this point and we don't like the results and we're changing the goalpost, I mean, I just disagree with that philosophy. I mean, regardless of what the statistics are. I mean,
okay with, I mean, we know more about this today than we did before, I mean, or even just last week. And I have no problem with changing the policy, but to me, there's a threshold of evidence as well as risk mitigation that you have to hit to justify the change. And even with the remote, I'm like, or even with just the athletic, you still have the concern with the staff and being able to effectively keep it going. Because I agree that the students and are proving to be, like, I think when we even talked back in the summer, that it's a lot less risk for them, but there is a higher risk for the staff just of the nature of what COVID is.
So if the staff so what you're saying is that there's a higher risk for a coach coaching 25 kids in a gym than there is but the staff member and the teammate, they're both wearing masks, which if you're wearing a mask and I'm wearing a mask and I call you tomorrow that I'm positive COVID, you don't have to quarantine. So what is the risk to the coach?
Well, I mean, we have a lot of coaches right now that are quarantined.
Yeah, because they didn't have masks on.
I think the mask thing is, I mean, I see all these pictures on Facebook of these athletic teams, and the number of them that don't have masks on hugging after the game. I think we're fooling ourselves to think that there isn't some level of increased exposure at those events. There has to be. I've seen too many pictures that would indicate otherwise. And while I know it's not popular, we made what I would consider a calculated risk in August to get kids back in this building. We put kids at risk to some degree, maybe not very much. We put teachers at risk. We put community members, family members, other folks at risk because of the value to get these kids back in the building. And I would make that decision again. I can't look myself in the mirror and put those same people at risk for basketball practice. It doesn't work. It doesn't work in my head. And I know it's not popular, and I'm sorry.
What is the risk that what is that risk? What risk are they in that they aren't in when we aren't in right now?
That's risk that they control and not risk that we can mitigate. So I don't know what the number is, but I know that we have the ability to mitigate it, and we don't have the ability to control what they do otherwise.
You're just saying they're not at risk. It's just that after the game when the kids take off their mask, then they're at risk. So, but if the kids never took their mask off, and if they did, they were off the team, they get completely kicked off the team. So nobody ever takes their mask off to take a picture after the game. Then would you support it?
If it's too risky to be in this building, then it's too risky to be on the basketball court. So no, I would not support it.
I know where you're coming from, Kai, and I have a lot of the same considerations. I think for me personally, I'm just weighing them, prioritizing them just slightly different, because I think that's where we're at is that level of, you're on, it's pretty, because I'm on the edge of it, but I'm just right on that side of,
I get your point. I don't know how you quantify it. I mean, it might be 1%, it might be 0.5%, But it's whatever it is, we can control that if we say there are no athletics. And if we can control it, are we doing our jobs if we don't?
I want to be clear on one thing, it's not just athletics, there's also other activities going on,
I get it, the whole,
speech, drama, yeah.
I think didn't Keisha say that some were approved remote activities?
Help me on that.
Debate and speak, or debate,
I think
Scholar
that's-
Bowl, those are remote right now anyway.
So,
Correct. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, no matter what decision we make, it's gonna be a wrong decision because some statistic's gonna move against us. But I guess the only thing I feel like is we can stick to our plan and do the best we can. I agree with Justin, it's that staying on top of reporting the numbers and communicating that out to the patrons, and so people have the time to get return back safely and hopefully successful extracurricular activities. But anyway, I don't know.
I do have a concern about not giving an end date though to it right around the holidays. And just as a teacher, like right now I'm preparing to send those kids off to do remote. So I'm preparing stuff and I know an end date so I can prepare everything that I need to have for them during that time, because young kids really don't learn best always on a computer. I need to be able to send some of those paper items home with them, or a book home with them, or something that they might need at home. Even I'm sending science supplies home for them to be able to do a science activity, and I know an end date, so I'm able to send enough. If I'm always wavering between, like, is it gonna be 2 weeks, is it gonna be 4 weeks, or am I gonna be 6 weeks? It's difficult to determine how much to send and what to send with them, and so I do think it'd be important to look at a potential end date after the holidays, and then reevaluate it after that. So,
Are you saying after the January?
so after the
Christmas
January,
holiday?
do we go a little bit longer after that Christmas holiday? Because chances are people are gonna travel. I would guess the numbers are gonna be high after that Christmas holiday. Or do we say, okay, the 4th, and if it's the 4th, then we try to stick, we
Then reevaluate.
reevaluate at that point. But I do think we need to have an end date for this current situation, and then at the end of that date, then look at it for the 2 weeks after that.
That's how we looked at it.
No. Your teacher perspective is always very valued on it.
You'd have to have, otherwise you're gonna have parents coming to pick up supplies if they need to, or you're gonna have probably activities that aren't as effective and meaningful with kids if you're not that prepared.
Any other comment on that, or anyone else have any other discussion on the recommendation?
Well, I don't know, I'd like to hear from the administrators what they think of that.
Mr. Farrar.
You know what, I appreciate protocols and processes and plans, and I think, I agree with Jim that we have to follow the plan. On a personal level, I think elementary kids need to be in school. That's just my personal, but I support Mr. Phillipscamp's recommendation 100%, because we've had several meetings and talked about everything that you're talking about here tonight. So, that's where I'm from. I mean, for me, either way, I want to support what the board says, and I support what Mr. Phillipscamp gave as a recommendation, because we sat down as a team and had a lot of dialogue about it.
Do you think that, do you think that your staff would value having a target date like the 4th for their planning purposes? Or do you think-
Absolutely, I think they would value any information so they can plan, I'm getting a lot of questions now, how rumors go, and it's, you don't wanna give misinformation, but our teachers, they'll react to whatever you tell them. If you said this date, this, that, they're gonna do it.
I think it'd be nice to have a tentative end date, knowing that it's gonna be reevaluated.
Yeah, I think it gives light at the end of the tunnel. One of the things we didn't have in the spring was a target. We were just, looking into the abyss. So if I've spent a lot of time, like all of you, like all of these people, thinking about this question, the million-dollar question: do you have activities? And I do want you to consider that while I support each of your decisions and collectively, since March, we have been digging out of a social emotional rut. And that doesn't mean that we ignore, you know, the hypocrisy of this question. We can't. But every day I look kids in the eye, our counselors, our assistant principals, and I think this is probably K-12. If you don't have light at the end of the tunnel, something to shoot for, and maybe we need to pause, and that's okay, but we've got to have something to shoot for. We've got kids in our building that struggle to have purpose. And they're struggling because of that void from March to August. And that's life-changing. They've lost that direction. Maybe they've convinced themselves that they're not interested in that pathway anymore. So I think that whatever decision we make for this community, we've got to have light at the end of the tunnel. We've got to put a date out there. We're going to reevaluate it now, revisit it then, whatever date that may be. I think that gives our kids purpose, and we'll hold on to it. One thing I do want to say, with the remote plan, we would like to have the opportunity to bring in our SPED kids that are medically fragile, even if we're remote. So that's a small number of kids that need our services every day. We'd like to have your blessing to do that.
It's middle school's plan as well to do that.
Okay.
And I would say that we're gonna have some kids in that category at the elementary school too.
And we also have a small population of students that can't get reliable internet service, and so we've got 2 holding rooms that we're using at the high school that we'd like to bring small numbers in, spread them out safely, and so they can do the remote learning from those locations, and they'll be supervised.
Yep. That's the middle school's plan as well.
And we're gonna have that situation where it's about staffing and things, you know. There's some variables, but, you know, whatever you throw at our staff, they're gonna do. I agree with Mark, if we have an end date or just some pretty simple information, here's what our plan is, here's our dates, and go with it, all these staff members they'll rally. They're good people.
Any other comments, thoughts? We could probably talk.
So am I understanding this right? We would say we'd start remote November 30th, and then we may come back in 2 weeks.
If I followed the plan,
You'd come back in 4 weeks.
4 weeks, possibly. If we were in yellow for 2 consecutive weeks. But I'm not, truthfully, I don't think that will happen. I'm just.
So our goal, I'll talk one last time and then I'll be quiet.
You're
I
fine,
promise.
Kat.
But I'm really, I might cry. I'm so stressed out right now. So my thing is that somebody has to explain this to me, because everybody in this room has always said the most important thing is the education of our kids, okay? We've also sat in this room and said, the kids are struggling. When they went remote, they're struggling. That is a proven fact, okay? So we had to give everybody a day off per month so that the kids could go back in the high school, so that they could have 1 day of contact with their kids or with their teachers. And we all supported that because that was the best academic for those 111 kids or whatever they are, I don't know. But anyway, so now as I sit here, I'm thinking, okay, so we are gonna basically, even if we don't say an end date, with the holidays and everything, realistically, we're gonna go remote the 30th. We're not gonna come back until after Christmas. And we don't know when that date is. And so now, being in school, we all know 64% of the kids were failing when they were remote, right? So now we know that it's a proven fact that that's not the best for the kids. So I do think everyone needs a break, but giving them a 2-week break so that we can then reevaluate the community numbers and then look at and then reevaluate it after 2 weeks. Like start the 23rd, go 2 weeks, reevaluate it, come back the 8th of December. You have 2 weeks before Christmas. Then everyone can reconnect and reevaluate. If the hospitals are still at capacity after 2 weeks and you can't do that, then that's so be it. That's how it is. But nobody knows that. And that is in the best interest, I think, statistically and proven fact that is in the best interest for the education of the kids. And the other thing is that I'm hearing the majority say, well, we can't have athletics. So what you're saying is other districts in our league may have athletics. They might all be able to practice from now until January, but we can't. And that is some people, that to me, that's education too. That is some kids' why. That is some kids' reason that they try to get above a D so that they can practice. And so now I'm like, okay, so when I go home tonight, I'm going to go, okay, well, the most important thing that the Board of Education always says is the education of the kids. That is always first. But right now, we've proven that it's safe to be in schools. We've proven that remote is not the best education. We've proven that academics, or that athletics is important for the academics, and the emotional well-being of students. So we've proven all those things, but we're doing the opposite of every single one of them. So somebody needs to explain this to me, because I have 3 kids in high school and I have to go home and say, well, guess what? And that's what every parent has to do. So if somebody can explain it to me why this is best academically and best social emotionally for our kids, great, because I'm so confused. And one last thing, and as far as changing plans, we change plans as a Board of Education all of the time. I have sat here for 5+ years and the plans change all the time. The calendar changes, whether we bring remote students back in for a day and send the students home for a day, that changes. Like, you can't say we have a plan, we're sticking to it, because we don't do that. Like, that is not our MO.
So,
I mean, I guess it comes to some of what Drew said before. We also have to think about the staff feel that we can't teach the kids in the building if we don't have the staff available to do that.
But that's not the problem. That is the problem in the high school.
Well, it is at one building.
Okay, but then when you get to that problem, you solve the problem. You don't say, okay, this is just my opinion, but that's what happened in the high school, and we all supported it. Mark said, we have a problem, and this is what we need to do, and we said, all right, go for it. And you have the principal of the elementary school saying, the best thing for our kids is to be in class.
He's also
But yet,
saying the staff is really stressed out and strained.
okay, give them 2 weeks off. I mean, not off, but I don't even know. Like, have a shortened day then, or have them come 4 days and have 1 day off for planning. Like, solve the problem. Like, the problem is that okay, so if the problem is that the staff is maxed out, I get it, and we should solve that problem, absolutely. But we're not solving that problem. Some of the staff is going to go home and teach remote, and they have toddlers. That's not. I don't even like to clean my house when my kids are home. Like, that is hard. Sorry, I should be quiet.
No, I mean, this whole discussion is the purpose why we have open meetings. Where I'm at with regards to the plan is I would be open to having a tiered return, because to me, there is less risk with the athletics. The trend right now is clearly on an increasing rate. And if you were in a position to where it was red and there was a trend decreasing, then for me, I'm in the spot to where then I would be okay with athletics starting first, the trend continuing on a decreasing rate, and then returning back to school in a tiered return. To where, because right now with the trend, you say, hey, we hit this threshold with the staff at the quarantine level to where we can't maintain because of just how many folks are quarantined. there's no reason for me to believe that we're not going to also at some point hit that with this trend at the middle school and elementary school. And that with that trend, you won't also hit it with the, because you have less flexibility on the coaching than you even do in some of the classrooms. Because the numbers of each individual sport are a lot lower than what you have available in the classrooms, that you're gonna hit that with the athletics as well. And I don't know that that is anything other than inevitable.
We could have had all these discussions in August. Every single, we should have said, well, yeah, all these things might happen, but we didn't. We said, this is what we're gonna do, and we have to adjust as things come up. And they didn't come up, even though we thought it was very, very likely, and we have 20,000 emails from people telling us all of the things that could have happened, but they didn't. We don't have a crystal ball. Mark said the other day, we need to go remote because we don't have staff. Okay, do it.
Well, high school
But-
can pivot to remote a lot easier than the other schools. I mean, we've said 2 days, but I mean, I think this proposal's suggesting 4 days. And with the proposal that's out there, they're not gonna stop practice until next week. Keisha will also have a meeting. I mean, if the Keisha doesn't approve the extracurriculars, I mean, I think that puts a little bit of different light on things, because we wanna try to keep our students competitive with everyone else, depending on what the trends are. But I mean, I guess as it's presented today, your practice isn't stopping today or tomorrow. The students aren't gonna go home remote until the 30th. I mean, I think it buys us some time to kind of keep this in place, and I don't know, I mean, I'm kind of torn on the end date or not end date. I would like the data to kind of tell us, but I can see from the staffing perspective and giving the students information that people need to know, like, as of today, this is kind of where we're headed for so long. But, I don't know. It is really, there isn't an action item to, approve the recommendation. We already gave Lauren that authority. I mean, I guess tonight, I did put on there if we wanted to establish an end date, and I mean, in terms of the strategic plan, the only thing I really thought that we needed to probably address there was the clarification about this 2 weeks or 1 week. If people want the 23rd or if they want the 30th, based on kind of the data, was my opinion.
We will make either work.
So, my thought on the 2 weeks versus 1 week, I think that is a miss that we should have documented in the plan. And I think we gave Lauren and Tanya the ability to tweak the plan as appropriate. So, I would, my proposal would be we follow the plan, but that we give guidance around, tweaking places where there's lack of clarity, like the 2 week thing. I think we probably also ought to tweak, there's 3 criteria, one of which we've already been in red for, 2 months. I think we ought to tweak
Which one we're looking at?
which one we're looking at, or are we looking at all of them, or are we looking at any one of them? Which one are we looking at? And then I would also tweak the plan for how do we communicate a plan to return to the classroom? And I think we've already given Lauren and Tanya the ability to administer the plan, and to me, those are clarifications of a plan that already exists, and I think that would fall within what we've already given them the authority to do.
Yeah.
And to Guy's point, if something changes, we can have another special board meeting, tomorrow, or next Monday, or next Tuesday, and tweak the plan more than, or blow up the plan if it needs to be blown up. I don't see any data points right now that would justify doing it tonight.
Anything else? Anyone? I mean, if there's nothing else, I guess I would move into the action items. I mean, based on what I'm hearing, I would probably move that we table item 3. Or we take no action on item 3.1. It doesn't seem like an end date is necessarily necessary, but that would be my motion. I don't know if there's a second or any other discussion on that?
Your motion was to table the action items?
Well, I said take no action on it. I don't know what we would table it for.
But, okay. I would second that motion.
Okay, there's a motion to take no action on item 3.1, been moved by me, seconded by Justin. All in favor, please raise your right hand.
Remind me what 3.1 was, sorry.
Sorry, it's the approval to set an actual end date for the remote learning. Sorry.
Sorry, my computer died.
I was assuming that everybody had it laid in front of them. But again, the motion is to take no action on item 3.1 in terms of approving an end date to the remote learning plan. All in favor, please raise your right hand. All opposed? Okay, motion passed, 6-1. All right. That would put us to item 3.2 in terms of approval of any changes to the strategic open plan. I mean, I think we've all made a few different comments on that. I guess I'm not sure exactly how the board would like to move forward with this. Justin made one recommendation in terms of just allowing them to tweak that.
My thought would be, we have plenty of time. I think, the next board meeting is December 14th, and we can bring that back to the board on the 14th with what those changes would look like for your approval.
To me, those changes are not substantive to the plan, they're clarifications to what
Right,
the
they are,
original
they
intent
are.
was. I don't think the board needs, I think
Okay.
if you feel with one opinion, so everybody.
No, we can do that. It doesn't have to be an action.
I think we've already given you the authority to administer it. To me, those are tweaks in what it takes to administer it. And, you know, unless we grossly disagreed with what you did, I think you guys should go do that.
That works.
Yeah, I guess I added this as an action item so that there were differing opinions and anybody cared to make a recommendation to change the plan or do that, that could be done tonight. I guess I would just put it out there as an opportunity for anybody to make a motion.
Yeah, my motion would be to change the plan so that when we're in red, we can have extracurricular activities.
All right, Kai made a motion to amend the plan to add extracurriculars if we're in red. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded moved by Kai, seconded by Stephanie, that we amend the plan to add extracurriculars if we're in the red. All in favor, please raise your right hand. All opposed, please raise your right hand. Okay, motion failed 5-2. I guess that's the only action on that. The rest of that lies with you guys in terms of making tweaks necessary to the plan to kind of clarify things. With that, we're at the end of tonight's meeting. We adjourn.